Hi, I'm Lisa Bagshaw, and welcome to Bold Leaps, the show that interviews creative, inspiring, successful people about the risks they've taken to pursue their dreams. And today's guest is performer, host, model, activist, Kendall Gender. When Ken Wise was a little boy growing up in Richmond, BC, he would dance around in his mom's hat and pearls and lip sync to Brittany Spears. By all accounts, he was born a joyous, expressive performer with a flair for the dramatic. But then, at 13, Ken was bullied. As with many kids, he exchanged his joyous expressions for trying to be cool and fit in. This survival technique led him down a dark and lonely path until he took himself on a solo trip to Italy, where he started to rethink his life. As he began to reclaim his identity, his life began to change rapidly. Back in Vancouver, he went to his first drag show. A few weeks later, he performed on stage in drag for the first time. After that, she became Kendall Gender, then the Queen of Vancouver, and then, in the past few years, international drag sensation. Welcome to the show, Kendall.
Ooh, thank you for having me. That was, oh my gosh, wow. Hello, wave to the people. Thank you for that beautiful intro.
Oh my gosh.
That was emotional, actually, to be honest.
You know what? I actually, in preparing for this interview, I was actually feeling really emotional about it because to me, it's a story of reclamation of your identity, the journey of that into authenticity. And then once you found authenticity, it just seemed like your life just took off. So
yeah, I think for so many people, drag can be really living in a superficial world. That's a lot of the exposure that we get to it. So to kind of hear, I don't know, just the way you introduce it and kind of really go into the fabric of like who I am and why I am the way I am, it was very interesting to hear. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I think it really, because one of the things I wondered about when I first encountered you on Canada's Drag Race was your incredible shining light. And having overcome what you've overcome and the lessons that you learned, I really wanted to talk to you on this show because I think you have the possibility, you do it already, to inspire so many people to be themselves and pursue their dreams and reclaim themselves. So thank you for your bravery. And I want to talk about the story and your life and everything.
Oh, well, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. So what sort of started, I mean, I imagine being bullied and kind of trying to be something that you weren't, and then going to Italy and then really starting to reclaim yourself. What was that journey like?
Yeah, I think right when I was born, I kind of came out a little bit more flamboyant than the rest. And, I was very lucky to be born into an environment that sort of flamboyancy and creativity was really fostered. My mom was very supportive of it and never really batted an eye with, all the eccentricities. But then when you sort of go into different social settings like, school and the city that you live in and that kind of stuff, that's really when you start to realize the differences within yourself. And I think that goes for a lot of people, racial differences, gender expressions, all this kind of stuff. It's really when you are outside of the norm, if you will, is when you start to feel a sense of dislocation almost. And that really happened to me at a really young age because I was just this way without even trying to be this way. It's not like something grand happened and all of a sudden I became this way. I just instantly was like that. And I never really realized that I was different until other people told me I was different. And it was a jarring sort of experience. And I think a lot of queer individuals face that feeling. Yeah, I feel like I have memories of feeling different, if you will, even from like kindergarten, grade 1. I remember I wanted to dress up as Victoria Beckham, because obviously the Spice Girls in the 90s were everything, and I wanted to dress up as Victoria Beckham for Halloween. But even at that age, I almost put on the mask, if you will. So to school, I dressed up as Jack from Titanic, but then after school, I dressed up as Victoria Beckham. And that sort of masking is something that a lot of queer individuals sort of have to do for a lot of different reasons, safety being one of them. I knew that in grade whatever it was, 1 or 2, that it would be safer for me to go to school presenting as a boy than in drag, I suppose, if you will, for the first time, just because I didn't want to get made fun of.
Yeah, and then you sort of started adapting.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is a sort of linear thing that's gone through my entire life. I'm extremely eccentric now, obviously, and my drag is, or my life is to present in drag a lot of the time. But there's definitely environments where that masking still exists. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that kind of goes across the board.
How do you deal with that masking?
I mean, it's almost like it just becomes a safety blanket. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, because it's like, I just want to protect my peace and my safety in a lot of ways. And, it's just something that we do. To the gig sometimes, of course, you'll I'll put on a baseball hat or a hoodie to get to the gig, and then you kind of do it like that. Mm-hmm. It's not like a completely deliberate thing, but it's definitely something that I'm conscious of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is it sort of an armor?
Armor, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that any time that you're protecting yourself can be considered armor, for sure.
And so when you were older then, and you're in, I think this is the story, you were in Italy. Yes. And things started to change. And then you came back to Vancouver and you went to a drag show. Yeah. Your first drag show.
Yeah. I mean, when I was 18, I moved to Italy and sort of found a completely different crew of people and different, artists and all these kind of models and all this sort of stuff. And it really broke me out of my shell in a lot of ways. And it, I developed a totally new sense of style. I dyed my hair, I put on some crazier clothes, and we sort of did the thing. And it really allowed me to express a part of me that I had maybe kept a little bit more hidden for a few years. And it was a very beautiful thing. It's really cool to look in the mirror and see a sort of creation of a person that you've always wanted to see. And for me, that really was drag. I remember the first time I got into drag, it was one of the coolest things ever. Just I don't know, it really felt like a person had bloomed, if you will.
I love that. And I love that you got there in that journey. And that's something that I'm really interested in. So you came back to Vancouver, went to a drag show, and it sounds like it was very soon after that you actually got on stage. So
yes. How
did you feel when you were on stage for the first time performing drag?
I just felt so powerful. For me, that is another form of armor in a lot of ways. This sort of character and fierceness. There's so much, I don't know, joy and electricity that exists within my drag character. So to be able to share that on stage was such a cool feeling.
And did you feel in alignment with yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I know it's kind of funny to think I created another person to feel the most like myself. But there was a lot of, connections that kind of came when this character started to develop.
Connections within yourself.
Absolutely.
Of authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we have to take a break. Unfortunately, we're going to come back right away, though. I want to find out what life was like when Kendall woke up the next day after performing and see how she felt and what she did next. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm here with Kendall Gender, and we're talking about her incredible, now we're going to talk about your incredible rise to fame.
Oh.
So after you performed drag for the first time, and you felt that certain parts of you were sort of clicking in, you woke up the next morning. How did you feel?
Ooh, I felt reinvigorated, I think is the best word to describe it. Yeah, it was really cool to express that feminine side of me because it almost made me feel more comfortable within my masculinity as well. Which kind of sounds a little bit strange, but I felt like I didn't at that time need to or want to express myself on a daily basis as eccentric in certain ways because I had found drag. And it was a really cool sort of feeling. I really felt like my energy as a person kind of chilled out. And I was just kind of okay, I have this beautiful creative outlet now, and like everything kind of like just felt at peace.
That's incredible. That must have been just help you to just focus your path from there on. So what did you do from that point in terms of your career?
Yeah, I mean, the coolest thing about drag is you kind of get to be the like CEO of a bunch of different things. You know what I mean? You can kind of be like into fashion, into hair, into makeup, into, you know, graphic design, really everything and anything sort of can encompass within this like character that you've developed. So for me, I kind of took all of the skills that I had learned over my life from like dance to, you know, everything, and kind of put them on this one path. I started developing, you know, my own shows and performing very regularly, and kind of just took off.
Well, that, and from an outsider's perspective, that's how it seems. It seems like from the moment you performed on stage, your your career just rapidly took off. Is that what happened?
You know, it might seem like that on social media, but really we're coming up to about 10 years of doing this since the first time I actually got on stage. So although I've had great successes and 100%, I definitely have worked really hard for them. And it wasn't really overnight, right? Like it's 10 years of investing into this career. And I'm so happy where I am now, but that's because of hard work.
Mm-hmm. But prior to the opportunity to apply to Canada's Drag Race, I heard you say that you were sort of casually doing drag, and you were actually at Kwantlen.
Yes.
And taking a graphics course.
Yes.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that would come in handy in any way. So what made you, how did the opportunity come to be to apply to Canada's Drag Race?
Yeah, I mean, prior to that, yeah, I was definitely doing drag, but I was sort of on the time where I was like getting to that age that I was thinking, I'm like, do I want to be doing drag full time, or do I want to sort of go into a different career? So I ended up, I went back to school, and I was taking a little bit of time off from doing drag, and then the applications came out for Canada's Drag Race, and I was like, well, let's try it. And then obviously it ended up working out, and I took a semester off of school, and you know, that was 3 years ago.
So that was your attitude, let's try it?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely something that I obviously wanted to do. You know, when you see the opportunity to make all of your dreams come true in a very tangible way, you kind of want to grab for it. And for me, that was Canada's Drag Race, or Drag Race in general. It was the highest level of drag in my, you know, eyes at the time, and still now. It's like the Olympics for what we do, right? So that was the opportunity that I really wanted to do.
And through an arduous process,
yes.
How arduous was it?
Well, I actually applied.
Yeah.
I actually applied for the first season and then didn't get on, and then applied for the second season and did get on. Yeah. So again, still a journey. But yeah, it's quite a long process to get on to the show. It's a lot of casting, a lot of phone calls, a lot of videos, making outfits, showing outfits, all that kind of stuff.
Well, you have to be so talented too in order to be on. So
yeah,
you have
it takes
to
a lot of
show
work.
a lot of work. When you applied for the first one and you didn't get on, how did you feel?
To be honest, I think I allowed myself a few moments to feel sad and disappointed. But then for me, I'm really that person that every time something goes wrong or askew, it makes me want to work 20 times harder towards the goal. I remember right after the like, they were filming actually, I flew myself to Toronto and did like 2 weeks of shows there. Because I was like, well, maybe I didn't get on because I'm not as like, you know, noticed in the rest of the country. And just like those little things, I was like, well, I've got to push my career forward in whatever way I can. So it did actually inspire me to go a little bit harder. Again,
you know, from an outsider's point of view, it did look like a rapid escalation of you placing in the top 3 on Canada's Drag Race. And then the All-Stars.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine the demands of your talent and your time and your energy in something like that. Did you feel, I mean, I would be terrified. Were you?
Yeah, there was definitely an element of being scared for sure, especially when you're so passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
You know, like even when I watch the episodes back, I'm like, I can see just like how emotionally invested I am in every single thing. And it's just because I care a lot. So it's, it can be very intense.
And how did you overcome those feelings when you're so high profile like that and so much pressure?
I think it depends on the situation. I don't necessarily know that it was one sort of like tactile response to it. I think when things go awry or you're in a very stressful environment, it really like, I don't know, it can kind of like make you who you are, if that makes sense. I don't know, like I feel like when I was in those like really, really, really stressful situations, I allowed myself to react whatever felt naturally. I didn't want to put on like an idea of like, okay, well, this is what I need to do in order to get through this. Like if I am in a bad situation, I want to allow myself to go through that like trauma, if you will, because I really think that that's sort of what makes you a person. I think I've been through a lot of like dark stuff in my life, and I never want to like shy away from the badness or the stressful situations.
That's incredible, because that's not what most of us do. Most of us avoid those feelings or use distractions in some way, but you face them and you...
Yeah, I feel like, I'm not gonna say I like going through traumatic situations or anything like that, but there's always that tiny little voice in my head that's like, okay, today is really dark, or this moment is really dark in your life, but it's going to make you appreciate the light when that comes. Because I don't believe that you can be truly happy without being truly sad. Because how do you know what that feeling is without feeling the opposition?
So you are able to consciously think about those dark days as temporary and just a normal part of the process.
It's life.
Yeah.
Life is never going to be 100% perfect all the time.
Yeah.
I don't believe, at least not in my experience.
Yeah, yeah. When did you know that you would be okay?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I've had a few moments in my life. I think definitely, seeing your life's passion or life's work being projected onto media in that sense, and really having this kind of like time capsule like Drag Race, that was such a moment for me, because I was like, okay, no matter what happens for the rest of my life or the next years coming, I have this very tangible thing that I did and I'm very proud of. So I think really the show coming out was a huge, like a weight lifted off my shoulders, and kind of was like, everything that happened was so worth it.
And it all makes sense.
And it all makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
even the dark days.
Yeah, because I was, very open about a lot of the struggles that I've had on the show, and I'm not ashamed of them by any means. So it was kind of a beautiful therapeutic thing, sharing that with the world.
I think you are a beautiful therapeutic thing.
Oh, sometimes.
We have to take a break, unfortunately, but stay with us, because I'm going to ask Kendall about how life is now, and how she copes with superstardom, and what advice she has for those of us who are too afraid to pursue our dreams, when we come back. Welcome back to Bold Leaps. Kendall, we're having a wonderful conversation about your life. Tell me about how do you cope now with really superstardom?
I think that anytime that you're really like broadcast in the public eye, it definitely has its ups and downs. You're filled with so much love and joy from people that connect with what you do and your art and who you are as a person and all that kind of stuff. But to be honest, there's also the other side to it. I get a lot of feedback sometimes from people and the world, and it's not always amazing. I think especially right now, the sort of like social climate that we're in when it comes to people's opinions on drag and trans rights and all of this kind of stuff, I think that it's sometimes targeted towards the people that are in the public eye. I definitely get a few like crazy messages. But it's something that we kind of have to deal with, and I'm never one to shy away from a conversation or a fight.
Well, I think that's is such a much bigger issue. That's
Yes.
a huge issue that's going on in the whole world right now, which is
Yeah.
horrific. But you also brilliantly use your platform to make a really big difference in so many people's lives.
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you to say. I've always wanted to do that from the minute that I started really drag in general. You know, I really believe that if I've chosen to be on stage or be a public figure, whatever, if people are, you know, dazzled by my beauty and my diamonds, then we can kind of give them a little serious thing to think about as well, kind of like all interlaced in there. Because if they're looking, might as well also give them something to think about.
Absolutely. Great idea. And you've given a lot of people a lot to think about. I have only time for 2 more questions.
Okay.
Okay. One is, what is the biggest lesson you've ever learned in this whole sort of process of your career?
Ooh, authenticity is the best thing. I think that there was a really big period of my life where I was more concerned with what other people wanted from me or expected from me. And I think that being truly authentic to yourself is what brings me the most joy. And I really believe that that sort of feeling transcends. You know, people gravitate towards it. And ultimately, if I'm happy in what I'm doing and what I'm presenting and who I am as a person, then I don't know, I feel like that's just the best thing.
Well, that's what people resonate with,
Yeah.
I think. And what advice would you have for people who are too afraid to pursue their dreams?
Well, you only get one life. So you might as well make every day a dream come true, really. You know, I mean, you might as well take a leap. You never know what's going to come from it. I mean, you know, I couldn't have possibly dreamt of living the life that I live now. You know, seeing myself in drugstores or seeing myself on TV, I couldn't have possibly imagined it. And the only way that I got there was by taking a bold leap.
And what about people that are too afraid, though?
I feel like fear should drive you in some ways. You know what I mean? Take that fear and take that sort of like, you know, anxiety. I still live with a lot of anxiety, and I just try to use it to push myself forward. Because if you have the energy already bubbling up, might as well try and curve it in the right direction.
Well, that is excellent advice. I love that. And I just want to thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you.
You are such a beacon of joy
You're
and
sweet.
inspiration and beauty. And I love that you have this international platform where the whole world gets to see your beauty and your joy. So thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for another episode of Bold Leaps. Thanks for watching. Check us out on YouTube and social media for more inspiring episodes and updates. Tell us your bold leaps in the comments. Special thanks to our sponsors. And remember, every step you take is a step toward your dreams. And special thanks for sponsorship of this episode, KPU, where thoughts meet action.